All right. I'm making this video to explain how systemic racism works, and also how blacks have been said to fail even right from infancy, even before they were born, even before African Americans were born, they were said to fail. And for us to like really understand the plight of the African Americans, I think it's better for us to understand a little bit of the US history. All right. But first of all, think about this. The average white American is worth 171,000 US dollars. I'm talking about the average white American family. But then the average black American family is worth about 17,100 US dollars. So if you look at these two figures, the average white American family is worth about 171,000, where the average black American is worth about 17,000. That's like almost 10 times how much white people are worth in this country. And what does this lead to? This leads to a wealth gap. There is a gap when it comes to wealth. White people have been able to establish wealth for themselves. All right, so why this big gap in wealth? What started this? How did white people end up becoming wealthy? How did the average white person become wealthy compared to the average black person? And it all dates back to history. All right, it started right from slavery. All right, so let's go back to the Jim Crow laws. If you know a little bit about the US history, then you know about the Jim Crow laws. These were laws which legalized racial discrimination. So based on the Jim Crow laws, it segregated the black people and the white people. So blacks were not allowed to attend the same academic institutions as white people. Black people were not supposed to occupy the same jobs as white people. So these Jim Crow laws, they were put into place to limit the black man throughout history. And imagine this law going on for 100 years. All right, so this law went on for almost 100 years, in a period in which white people were succeeding compared to black people. So how do you create wealth in America? Back in the days, the best way was to get a quality education and also to be able to buy homes. Because once you are able to buy a house, then you will be able to sell the house, rent it out, and then you'll be able to build wealth. Well, with all these Jim Crow laws in place, and with this group of KKK also in place, making sure that black people were never as equal as white people, black people were limited. Black people were not granted loans to be able to buy houses. Only white people were being granted the loans to buy houses. So, and black people were not being employed. They were not given equal employment opportunities as the white people. And black people were not accepted into the top academic institutions like the white people. So what happened was that these white people, they were able to own homes, they were able to buy houses, and they were able to get quality education. And in so doing, white Americans were able to gain wealth. And you know, wealth is transferred. And then they were able to transfer this wealth from their generation to their generation. So there is one end of the spectrum in which these white Americans, they were able to limit black freedom and rights. They were able to limit black opportunities. And then they were able to develop wealth for themselves. And when that happened, with the wealth they accumulated over that period, they were able to transfer from their generation to their generation. Then what happened to the black Americans? With the black Americans, they were limited. They were not able to buy homes. They were not able to get they were not able to get into the top high-notch, get high-quality education. So then what happened? So they were swimming in penury. They were limited to menial jobs. They were not able to create wealth for themselves. So African Americans, because of the situation that they were in, they were transferring poverty from one generation to another generation. This is what led to the wider wealth gap between white Americans and black Americans. Now, does this mean that black Americans were now working hard to become equal with white Americans? They did. We had the civil rights movement. We had so many movements going on for equal rights and opportunities. In fact, did you know there was Greenwood? Greenwood was a place where black people were able to, it was a community of black people. Black Americans were able to come together, and then they named it the Black Wall Street. This is where this was the epicenter of African American culture, and it was also for their business. Greenwood was a dream come true, because this was a time where blacks were being limited, and for a very big community to come together to be able to establish themselves, it was really, really a high stepping point for the black community. But guess what? Even at that time in Greenwood, where black people were making it, white people found a way to destroy that part as well, that community. So what do we know? So from what we saw, the gap between white Americans and black Americans was created. This wider gap was created right from slavery, long time ago. So while white Americans are transferring wealth, black Americans were transferring poverty. All right. So someone will ask me right now, don't we have equal opportunities? Don't we have schools right now which grant black people opportunities like C-STEP, and we have STEM programs and stuff like that which help black people or black Americans to be also able to make it? The answer is true. We have opportunities right now compared to back in the days. But guess what? You see, when a system is meant for you to fail, even in infancy, all right? Let me give you an example. When you come to black communities, our schools are funded just like the same way they are funded for the white Americans, or when you go to white communities. But the funding is different. When you go to white communities, their funding is different because they are well funded. So in white American schools, they are able to afford better teachers, better tutors, high quality education. But then you come to African American communities where they are not able to afford all these high quality teachers, high quality education, and then we have to settle for the little that we have. And it's very hard to see, especially when you are an African like me. So when I first came, like for us Africans who came here, when we come here, we see nothing but opportunities. Everything that we see is the green light. We just see the green light and we just want to hit that green light. Back from Africa, we've been trained to succeed in everything that we do. When I first came to the US, nobody told me to register for the SAT. I knew I wanted to go to an Ivy League university. I wanted to hit a high SAT score, so nobody taught me anything. I had to do everything for myself. Coming from Africa, I knew what I wanted. But when someone was born, for an African American who was born and raised here, due to the Jim Crow laws, chances are their great-great-great-grandfathers were not able to afford to go to school. Their great-grandfathers were not able to afford education. Their grandfathers were not able to afford education. Their fathers were not able to afford education. And they don't see the relevance of education. A lot of African Americans in this country, they are in school, but most of them have no idea why they are in school. And the reason is because the system has been built in such a way that it fills them. All the effects of the slavery and the Jim Crow laws have carried all the way to this point where their parents are not able to afford high quality education for them. Their parents were not able to afford education for themselves. So the children, they see their parents working and making money, probably let's say 20,000 a year. They are able to get a place to sleep, which is normal. So when you look at the white American, while they are having this high quality education, the chances of an African of a white American graduating even from high school is like 90% to 100%. But then you come into the black community, and then the graduation rate is 60%. And then the number of black African Americans who graduate from high school, those who end up going to college, even after college graduation, according to studies, if your name sounds white, you are twice as much to receive call for interview compared to if your name sounds black. All right. So even after going to school, even after getting your degree, when you apply to job with a white American, when you have the same resume, chances are he or she will be accepted compared to the African American. So the system fails us in such a way that, we are still suffering from the racial injustice and discrimination which has been carried on right from the onstart, from the Jim Crow laws all the way till now, which has created the big wealth gap. So now the question is, if you put the average black American in a white community, would they succeed? And the answer is yes. Let's look at a typical example. So let's revisit Princeton University. So for the graduation class of this year in Princeton University, the number one student, the student who graduated on top of his class, his name is Nicholas Johnson. He's a black guy. Then I studied his lifestyle. I studied his parents. Nicholas Johnson, he was the valedictorian, all right? And his father has a dual degree in medicine and dentistry. He was Harvard-trained physician. His mother is an attending physician. So both parents are doctors. So this is a person who has this average white American lifestyle. So right from the beginning, he was set up to succeed. So I'm not even surprised that he ended up succeeding and becoming valedictorian even in Princeton University. And the fact that he's the first black American to graduate on top is ridiculous, because this school has been in existence for almost 100 years. Now, if you put this same person, and then if you bring this person to the Bronx, and you take the person to, let's say, Bronx, any school in the Bronx, like I'm talking about this low income, like low funding high schools in the Bronx. For example, William Howard Taft High School. This is a high school, one building, and each floor is a high school. So in the Bronx, you come to one big building, and every floor is a separate high school with their own name, their own resources, and everything. If you were to bring Nicholas Johnson, who graduated on top at Princeton, and if he grew up in the Bronx, if he went to all these low-funding high schools and middle schools in the Bronx, the question is, would he have succeeded the way he has succeeded? Chances are, maybe he might. But what are the chances? Even if he did, he would have passed through a lot. So the thing is, white Americans have it easier. They have it easier compared to black Americans. And the reason is because they have been able to establish wealth, which they have transferred from generation to generation. And on the other hand, black Americans are not making it as much as we want to make it. And the reason is because these Jim Crow laws and all these laws limited black Americans from being able to make it. So instead of transferring wealth, we were transferring poverty from generation to generation till today. Now, yes, today we have opportunities, but this is a mental thing. That's one thing we need to understand. This is psychological. A person cannot just because a person is presented with an opportunity, the person needs to understand the purpose of that opportunity before the person will even make use of that opportunity. A lot of African Americans, when you study show that most people grew up even without their fathers. Most people grew up in communities where drugs are predominant. Most people don't know the value in education. All their lives they have had to work. So if I'm working right from middle school, and I'm making money enough to be able to buy my sneakers and watch. Why should I go to college? That's the mentality we carry around. Meanwhile, when with a white American, they have been set for success even when they were born. Most white people don't even have to worry about student loans. Why? Because even when they were born, they had a trust fund where their parents already had their college tuition in place for them. But for the average black man, you graduate and you end up with a lot of student loans. So now the question is, how can we? Now the gap is very wide when it comes to the wealth gap between African Americans and white Americans. We can't be in the same country where one group is worth 10 times more than the other group. When that happens, it leads to imbalance, instability, and that's what's gonna lead to protest. And we know that there is a correlation. People keep talking about how black people are violent. Black people are the ones, despite being the minority in the US, black people are the ones who are more acclimatized to committing crimes. Now, guess what? There is a correlation between poverty and crime and violence. When you put the average white American who grows in a poor home, chances are they will grow up sticking to drugs, they will grow up becoming violent, committing crimes and all that. So we can't sit there and blame the African Americans for acclimatizing themselves with drugs and stuff like that, which is not even true. So in order for us to bridge the gap between the wealth of the white Americans and that of the black Americans, there has to be changes. And what are some of the ways we can do to change it? All right. So the first thing is, for black people, we've got to be united, because if this protest has taught us anything, it has taught us that there is power in unity. Even when black people started protesting, white people started joining in, and then we had Arabs, and then we have Asians, and then we have all other people supporting right now. Like, you go to other countries and everyone is supporting the movement right now. And when I think about the people who are looting and destroying properties, and one thing that comes in my mind is, just like I was saying, they believe, like, when they look at the average worth of the white American being 171,000 compared to 17,100, they believe that even if they steal and loot from the white person's store, chances are they have money to replace whatever it is that they stole. These people who are looting, they have a belief that they are not being economic wise, they are not on par when it comes to white Americans. And if this coronavirus has taught us anything, it has taught us that people who are not able to save, people who don't have stable employment, are the ones who are suffering the most. And people who are already broke. People who are broke, and then there is protest and there is a chance to loot the store. Praise the Lord, they will go into the store and steal. So unless we bridge that gap between the white American wealth and that of the black, there will always be racial injustice. So how can we help bridge this gap? The first thing, like I said, is for us black people to become united. Because one thing that you realize is that there is not enough unity in the black community. When you go to every white American community, you realize that they are very tight. We need to establish economic power. How can we establish economic power? We can learn something from the NBA. In the NBA, black people, African Americans, have been able to establish athletic power. And because of that, they have become very good when it comes to athletics. How many white people have been chosen as number one pick for the NBA? It's mostly been black people. So this means that when presented the opportunities, black people are not just able to make it in whatever area that you put them, they are actually able to become better. So we can take one or two things from the NBA. And how were black people able to especially those who started, those who came from like LeBron James. These people were able to, for example, let me give you an example. Like LeBron James, he had to struggle growing up to make it. But look at his kids. His sons are already some of the best players in basketball right now. Why? Because they were built to succeed. So when we look at the children of LeBron James, even before they were born, they were destined for greatness because they had a dad who was capable of providing everything that they need. Unfortunately, a major population of African Americans do not have the things that LeBron has to give to their children to set up for them to succeed in whatever area that they find themselves in. All right. So we as African American black community, we have to be able to establish economic power. You know, I checked a list of billionaires in the world, and out of the list, I saw that 14 black people were billionaires. 6 of them are in the United States. And then I checked all over the world, we have about 2,000 plus. You know, we have about 2,000 plus billionaires. And you know, one thing I saw when I realized I studied the white people, I realized that white Americans usually, they usually help build their community. When they get money, they don't spend the money anyhow. They don't spend their money buying expensive cars. But guess what? When they get this money, they think about their next generation. They think about how they can set their next generation to succeed. So they go to their alma mater, like they go to their high schools, their colleges, and they donate. Black people, we need to start doing that. I realized that when this whole thing started, some of the black millionaires have started contributing. I saw that Michael Jordan gave $100 million to help Black Lives Matter protest. This is not, you should have done this a long time ago. If we want to succeed as black African Americans, we have to be able to build economic power. Those who are millionaires, by the grace of God, who's been able to get enough money, you should come into the community and help those who are coming up. Because instead of us African Americans spending our money buying, like I see Mayweather, and he shows more cars, more material possessions than he advises young people to succeed in life. If you are an African American and you've been able to make it in life, you have to become a mentor. You know, when you come to my street right now, you see a bunch of black kids who don't go to school, they don't work. All they do is do drugs, smoke weed 24/7. Why? It's not like because they don't know they don't want to succeed in life. It's because all their lives they don't know the quality in education. They all they know is, like, you know, seeing your homies and smoking with them and then going to sleep and, you know, recycling the same the trend the next day. So African Americans, we need to come together. We need to create mentorship. Just like the people in the NBA, they are able to create mentorship and they are able to train the younger ones. So even African Americans in middle school, they start playing basketball, even right from infancy, even right in middle school, they start playing basketball. And by the time they're in high school, they are the best. We should be able to train our younger ones to become entrepreneurs. Like, you know, someone like Ben Carson. I remember watching Gifted Hands in college, and I saw Ben Carson movie for the first time, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, this guy is really good. I want to be like Ben Carson. And guess what? This was an opportunity, you know, for Ben Carson. You know, the black community look up to you. So Ben Carson, someone like Ben Carson has to go into medical schools and then talk to young medical students, young black medical students, motivate them to study harder. But we don't see all these things. Until African Americans invest in our communities, we are going to keep suffering from the plight of the wealth gap between the whites and the white Americans and the black Americans. We have to invest into our communities. You know, all these billionaires, what are you gonna use your money for? Invest into the community. You know, for example, let's say if you take $1 million, you can come to the Bronx. You can do a lot for these young African American kids in the Bronx. Some of them, they have no stable home. Some of them grew up without fathers. Some of them grew up with single mothers. In order to set them up for success, we have to be able to invest in them. You come into the black communities, our high schools are not well funded. You put money in there. So someone like Mayweather, instead of buying all these expensive cars which are in your lot and just rotting away, you can use that money and invest in the black community. You paying for the funeral for George Floyd is not gonna solve anything. You coming into the community and investing your money into the younger generations is what's gonna solve the problem. So that's the first thing we've got to do. If we are able to bridge the economic gap between the white Americans and the white Americans, instead of them seeing us as a threat, they will see us on par. We are not begging them to see us as their co-equal. We ain't gonna sit there and beg white Americans to be like them, to see us like as one of them. No. We're gonna build our own wealth. We're gonna build our own economic power. And when they see us, they will see strong, black, knowledgeable men and women. If not, we're just gonna sit around. And we're just gonna sit around and they will keep showing racial injustice. Every time the police, the cop, every time they see the black man, they see an angry man. They see someone who is dangerous. That stereotype need to die. We're not like that. I'm not some scary looking. There was one time I was just driving by, a cop stopped me. He pulled a gun for no reason. Like, dude, like, you saw me, I was in my car. I ain't even moved. He just pulled a gun on me and like he started cursing out. He was like, oh, come outside and all stuff like that. We're now dangerous looking people. If we are able to create economic power, white people will have no other choice than to respect us. All right? So that's one thing that we need to do. And we need to be united. We need to create mentorship opportunities. If you are a successful black businessman or woman, go into the community and help build the next generation of black businessmen and women. If you are the black physician who's been successful, go into the community, look for black people who want to succeed as physicians, build them up to also become successful. If you go into a black community where majority of the young guys are doing drugs, you bring other athletes who can talk to them out of it. Look for jobs for them. We need to be able to become united, and then we need to be able to build a strong mentorship program which can help bring us together. And in so doing, it will help alleviate the wider gap between the white Americans and us. All right. And also, like I said, black Americans, we need to create more scholarship opportunities for upcoming, the younger ones. I'm always gonna use Mayweather as an example because I see him showing expensive. I know that you made your money and you know how to spend your money. But the white people too, they made their money. They know how to make their money. But then they still think of their generation and they still invest in them. So we need to start doing that. Because no one is gonna do that for us. Because when I check the list of billionaires in the world, you realize that most of these white Americans, they have scholarship opportunities set up for the younger ones. And in so doing, their wealth will keep transferring from generation to generation. Whereas the black billionaires, you don't see anything that they are contributing to the community. All right. So George Floyd, right now, I'm not sure, but the last time I checked his GoFundMe, it was like almost 12 million. So it took this man to die in order for us to donate 12 million to him. So how many black people are gonna die before people come in to help? We are alive right now, and this is the time for us to contribute into the community and bridge the gap between the wealthy white American and the poor black Americans. All right. So this is what I wanted to say, because racism is something that I don't see disappearing because, like, once someone sees themselves to be superior, there is nothing you can really do to change their minds. Yes, you can change their minds. Like this protest, they can temporarily change the minds of white Americans to see us to be on par with them. But these changes will be temporary. But until we do internal analyzing, and then we are able to analyze ourselves, and we are able to build a strong community for ourselves, we will always have a temporary solution to racial injustice and discrimination. Chances are when the cop is driving around and see ex-President Obama, they can't just pull him out and just treat him like and discriminate against him. Why? Because he has been successful in life. Every time the cop sees a black man and they see that you are successful and they see that you know what you are doing, like think about the fact that a cop stops you and then he tells you, show your ID. You show your ID and you are some big time lawyer, big time physician. Chances are they just look at you, they just smile, and they are like, just be careful. Even if you were overspeeding, they will just tell you to be careful. So we need to be able to build ourselves when it comes to economic dominance. If not, we can build athletic power. LeBron James is famous, he is rich, but guess what? Last year, he was told to shut up and dribble. So this means even with all the respect, even with all the wealth that he has accumulated, they still do not respect him. So it looks like athletic power can take you somewhere, but it doesn't really earn you respect when it comes to white Americans. And the only thing that I believe is for us to be on par with them when it comes to education. We need to be able to elevate the graduation rate of black people. We need to be able to decrease the gap between the crime rate between the white Americans and the white Americans. Because we are the minority in this country. If statistics show that despite being the minorities, we are committing more crimes, then it looks bad on us. So the best thing is for all these people who are influential to come into the community, to talk to these young people, to advise them, to show them the importance of education, to show them the importance of hard work. Take them to prisons, show them how it looks like. And in so doing, they will be able to see if they don't change from their ways, like where they will probably end up. But we need to create economic power. Without economic power, these people will keep looking down upon us, and they will just keep trampling their foot on us like we are just their doormats that they used to see us, even right from the Jim Crow days. All right. So this is the little I have to share. So in summary, the best thing for us as African Americans to do is to come together in unity, is to make sure that we create economic power. Just like we can use a template from the NBA. NBA players, they always go into the community, they always play basketball with the younger ones, they have fun with them, and they train them to become successful. And NBA players are being successful. Most of the time, the top 5 picks are mostly black people. We can do the same thing when it comes to education. We can do the same thing to build economic power. And in so doing, the white person will... Imagine being in class with a white person and you are way smarter than him. You think this person can disrespect you? Even if they disrespect you, it's going to be behind your back. We don't have to give them reasons for them to disrespect us, for them to look down upon us. Believe it or not, there will be some people who will be racist no matter what we do. Like, no matter what, there will be people who will be racist. But we can decrease the amount of racial discrimination and injustice by gaining economic power, which I have already talked about. All right. For example, I went to school with Michael Jordan's daughter. When I was in second year, she was in first year. But then for some reason, during my graduation, she was also graduating with us, which made no sense. But then later I realized that she probably came in with college credits already. And that's one of the privilege that white Americans have. Because when I was in the university, we would go to chemistry lab, and then they will be like, oh, I did this in high school. And I'm like, how the hell did you even do this in high school? And then that's when you realize that, the quality of education that white Americans are having in high school is way different from the quality of education that Black Americans are having in high schools. All right. So we need to be able to build a strong economic power, because it is the only way we can dismantle the flag of racism. And let's believe it. And also, I know there is a psychological impact of slavery on African Americans. Why do I know that? I know that because even in Africa, we are still reeling from the impacts of racism, of slavery. Till today, Africa as a continent is still struggling to make it, all because of slavery. The economic, the social, the religious, the political impact of slavery has overshadowed Africa. So as Black people, we need to come together. As Black people, we need to come together as one. Sometimes, it's funny because when I first came to this country, and especially this African American, you guys that we are fighting for right now, I sometimes feel like you guys tend to be even disrespectful to Africans somehow. Because when I first came here, you speak and your accent is different from them, and they tell you, nigga, go back to Africa, which really, really sucks. So if we are gonna do this together, Black, whether you are African, African American, we are all Black, is the same skin color. We gotta come together. Nobody is gonna see you and see you as African or African American. Dude, when I first came to the US, I remember I asked this guy, where in Africa you from? And he got so mad, like, dude, why are you telling me I'm from Africa? He got so mad because I asked him where in Africa he was from. Because from me, when I first came here, I thought every person was from Africa. So when I see a person and the person is Black, I just assume the person is from Africa. And I was like, bro, like, where in Africa are you from? He got so mad. And I was like, are you from Senegal? Oh man, he was gonna throw punches and all that, because he felt like, why do I smell like I'm African? So Africans, African Americans, we've got to come together. We've got to be one. And if we become one, then we can be able to fight. We can be able to fight racial injustice and build that economic power, which can help break the gap between the wealthy white American and the poor Black American. All right. So this is what I have to share. If you have any question, you can send it or the comment, and then when I see it, I can answer. But for now, this is all I've got to say. We need to build a strong economic power, and that is the only way. Trust me, the reason why these protests are going on is not because of George Floyd. Is because of the wealth gap between African Americans and the white Americans. African Americans feel like we have been deceived. We are looked upon in everything. And we are sick and tired. And that's the reason why we've got to the breaking point where it's like we can't stand it anymore. I remember when I started, I was in school one day. Even when I first came here and I started school, I came from Ghana, and in Ghana, in high school, we were doing advanced classes. So in Ghana, the things that you are studying is like college level here. So when I first came here, and I knew everything, and they thought I wasn't supposed to be where they thought I was way older than the other students. And then they called me to the office and they started questioning me about my background and stuff like that. No, they need to stop this nonsense where if you are Black and then you are smart, they think it's either you are older than everyone else, or let me be honest with you. I'm not putting in as much work that I'm supposed to put it in school right now, because I was sick and tired of people coming up to me and like, oh, I heard someone had 100 in biochemistry. Was it you? I got so tired. I used to, because I'm a very critical thinker. So I'm the kind of person who will ask the kind of questions that will elicit some kind of response and get people thinking. So when we first started school, I will be asking questions. And people will always come to me like, oh, you are always, how do you know this? How do you know that? And it got to a point, I broke down and I was like, can't I study without people feeling like I know everything? And since then, I really stopped studying like crazy. I just managed to pass. Like, I wasn't so concerned about getting A's. I didn't care anymore. I was only okay. It became psychological until today. I managed to pass. I don't care. I just managed to pass because I have this mentality that as long as I pass, I'll be fine. And that's what most or many African Americans are going through right now, psychological, because they tag us as not being good in everything that we do. Even when you go to Harvard and become a physician, you go up there and they still question you, which is sickening, which becomes very, very annoying. It's like no matter what you do, they still deem you not as relevant, because if you are in college and you are a black man and you are smart, it's because you probably went to a private high school. They don't think you can just be black and be smart. It's ridiculous, like, like that, and I hope that with time things will change. And but I don't think the answer to this protest is looting and stuff like that. The answer is for us to build economic power, and through that we will be able to bridge that gap. And once we are able to bridge the gap, white Americans have no option than to respect us. All right, so thank you. I'm gonna end here. If you have any question, you can put it down here. All right, bye. See you guys later.